All right. I think we are up and running and ready to get started for today. Let me switch layouts, get everything loaded, and we will go ahead and get started. All right. Let me set up some real quick beat in the background, and then I will do sort of an intro for what we're going to be doing today. All right, that should be fine. So let's see, just a real quick basic beat so there's not dead silence while I'm talking, and then we'll get started. All right, that'll do. So today we are jumping back into the practice and grind for beatboxing. I didn't really plan any specific lessons today since it's been a hot minute since we've done a jam stream. I wanted to spend some time doing drills and doing kind of more of a practice grind for the earlier part of the stream today, rather than do kind of like our sound status checks or do kind of an explanation of technique. Today, first part of the stream is going to be a bit more of just running through practice and doing a bit more of the repetitive type stuff just to sort of get that kind of routine and practice in. We will attempt to beat the freestyle record a little bit later. I'll throw the timer on. And then for the remainder of the stream today, we'll be working on BGM brainstorming ideas for a new project I'm working on. And I'll talk a little bit more about this when we get to the actual BGM portion. But for that reason, I have hooked up Synthesizer-kun again. So we do a real quick test to make sure everything's coming through on that side. Drop the beat down a little bit. So we should be able to hear stuff from the synthesizer that's plugged in, and we'll be making use of that during the BGM portion. I see Core Breaks here. What's up, Core? How are you doing today? Hope your Saturday is going well. And welcome to the jam stream. Let's turn off reverb when I'm just talking here. I also want to make sure the volume is good. I think my sound settings should be the same as last time, but I think I'm going to boost my mic up a little bit. I'm going to leave it about there, and let me know if it's too soft or if you can't hear me. Core says, I'm doing okay. Volume sounds great. Awesome. Thanks. I appreciate you folks being honest with me with the sound, which is my number one worry whenever we're doing these streams. So to recap, we'll do a bit of some drills and practice, and if people want to talk about any beatbox technique or anything with sound theory, we can do that too. And then we'll spend probably what I hope is the majority of the time today on the jam stream working with Synthesizer-kun, doing some BGM brainstorming. I've been playing around with the instruments a lot over the last couple weeks or so, and trying to figure out how it synergizes with my loop station has been pretty fun and interesting. So I think we'll be able to do some fun stuff. Let's go ahead and kill this. We will go ahead and get started. Like the caption says, we'll be doing sort of a warm-up. Just sort of get the blood flowing, and then from there we'll kind of proceed into more of the drills and practice stuff, which we haven't done in a bit. So it'll be kind of good to recap, talk about some of the things we've done before, and kind of pick up on the discussion. So we'll go ahead and get started. All right, looking at the audio readout, I'm not seeing it peaking super high. So again, let me know if certain sounds or instruments are coming across the mic really loud, specifically the snares. I'm still not used to reading this updated display for the audio readouts in OBS, but for things like the spit snares or the K snares, sometimes it'll hit yellow. I think this readout is showing true peak, which is lower than the previous default display in OBS. So that's why I'm keeping an eye on it to make sure it's not, blasting into the red in people's headphones. Of course, says sounds great. Okay, thanks again for giving me feedback. So kind of piggybacking off of the warm-up, in the past we've talked a little bit about bass technique, or we talked a lot about bass technique actually, and the different variations and different techniques can be used to create what you'd consider a bass tone or kind of a low end type of sound, like a melody or something that supplements a melody. And because I've been a little bit busier these last couple of weeks, I haven't been able to practice as much as I would have liked. And so I've been thinking a little bit about the developing bass sounds and which ones I want to kind of prioritize, and what you're probably going to hear when we get to the actual freestyle practice run or like record beating run. I'm going to try and mix up some different types of bass to, one, force myself to emphasize different ones and learn how to, move between different techniques. Let's see, Cora says, I really like the one that's called a clap snare. It sounds like a clap to me. It sounds like a sound that wouldn't come out of a person's mouth, and so it's cool that you can make it. Yeah, I think you've mentioned that before, Cora. So that's the BGM or spit snare. That's probably the sharpest one in the basic tool set, and that's one of my favorites. I did not learn that one immediately. It was probably the third or fourth snare that I learned how to do, because it's kind of an unusual motion, but it's not difficult to do. You just have to practice it to get it crisp. So the BGM or spit snare, that sounds like the real trick to that one, and it really does come down to warming up. When I wake up first thing in the morning, after being asleep for 3 hours, and I try and do anything beatboxing, your face muscles are cold, essentially. We've talked a little bit about why we warm up and do things like the real quick run through we just did. When there's no blood circulating in your face, their ability to do certain sounds, it just doesn't come out. It's just like trying to exercise when you get out of bed, right? Your body's not warmed up. Cora says, oh dang, sorry, my memory's not great. No, it's okay. I know you mentioned you like that snare sound, so I did want to just kind of make sure we're aware of which one it is in case you want to go look up how to do it. So BGM or spit snare, and I could talk a little bit. I could talk a little bit about how the technique works. Let me break it down again, if you want to learn. I know you'd mentioned being possibly interested in learning beatboxing. So, because the spit snare is not really that hard to do, it's just a weird motion. I can break it down here, and then feel free to consult this VOD in the future, or hit me up on Discord if you ever want some help, because it's not hard to do, but it's a weird motion, and it did take me a little bit to figure out. But once I did, it's just practice. All right, so I'll break down how BGM works, and I'll do this for any sound or any technique that I do that people want to know about. I always say, just stop me when you want more information on something, and I'll explain it to the best of my ability. So the spit snare, or BGM, is done using air pressure from your mouth through your lips. It can be a breathing sound where you're expelling the air from your lungs, or it could just be using the mouth pressure of air that's in your mouth. That kind of determines the strength of the spit snare. So the sound sounds like, I'm going to not point directly at the mic here, it sounds like a clap, like Cora said. Usually I just do it with mouth pressure, and it's not a breathing sound. If you actually force the air out, it comes out much more forcefully, but then you're committing that oxygen to doing that. So if you try and expel the air out, it sounds like kind of subtle, actually. You don't really hear a big difference, but you could push it and it'll sound a little bit louder, but you don't need to. If you just develop muscle strength, you can get more of a sound just by using mouth pressure. So how do you do the sound itself? If you press your lips together really tightly, and then like as tight as possible, and then force a little bit of air through, what it's going to sound like, if you're pressing and pushing the air through like a really microscopic gap, it's going to sound like a crackling noise, and it'll sound kind of like, that noise that babies make. That's the easiest example I've heard people use, so that's usually the one I reference. That kind of really like tight crackling sound, just that is where the sound starts. And so you want to take that and play around with the tension on your lips and the tightness until you get it as tight and crackly as possible. And then instead of just doing a prolonged noise, practice doing it in a burst. So let a little bit of air out and then clamp your lips down to seal completely and cut the sound off. So instead of, it's, and get it to be a short burst, and it's still going to be kind of crackly, and just practice that over and over until you can do the clamping and then the burst almost at the same time. It's slightly staggered by a millisecond, but when you do that and learn how to control it and cut it off, make it sharp, it becomes the actual clap sound. So it goes from to, and the forcefulness and crispness comes with practice. Your lip muscles, unless you play a brass or woodwind instrument, is not going to have strength in, I think it's your embouchure, that part of your lip. But it's easy to practice, and then just focus on getting a quick burst, clamping down, cutting it off. Of course, as I spook my cat, yeah, it's going to be a weird noise because regular people don't walk around making that sort of sound. But as you kind of just practice the muscle memory and technique, and it might take you a week or two of dedicated practice before you kind of get familiar with how to control your lips to make that sound crisp. But that's all the technique is. It's just controlled bursts of air between your lips and making it punch. You don't have to use lung power, and you don't have to use anything with your vocal cords or anything with your voice. It's just pure air pressure and lip control. So again, getting that quick burst, just to, and I found a good way to practice it. Once you can get the controlled burst, and it might not sound sharp or crisp, it might just sound kind of like splattery, which is normal in the beginning. Just practice doing it on quarter notes. So you do it once, and then sort of reset to the position and get used to just having your lips ready to do that motion consistently. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, just doing. You do drills like that, I guarantee you're going to see progression within probably about a week or less. Because it's just training, and your lips build endurance and conditioning pretty quickly, as long as you just keep it up, and force that muscle memory, and then you'll find that technique will get better. And so BGM snare is useful because it doesn't use any other parts of your anatomy other than just mouth pressure and lips. You can combine it with other types of sounds pretty easily, and it's a pretty versatile snare compared to ones that actually use lung power. So a good example contrast would be like an inwards K snare, which, again, we could talk about the technique for that if people want, but the inward K snare sounds like you're breathing in a really quick burst of air to get that sharp sound, but that means you can't do any other sort of long vocal cords or anything else with that because it's being occupied in that split second to do that snare. BGM snare is just your mouth. So if you get really good at humming, you can have that snare sort of supplemented with that, and then you're basically layering things at once because you're using two different parts of your anatomy. And I'm not super great at it, but if you're doing kind of like a trap-inspired beat and doing a real simple melody hummed through your nose, you can add the spit snare on top of it and combine it all together. So you might have something like and so the kick is breaking up the sound, but the hum and the actual snare, because they're coming out of different parts of your anatomy essentially, are a lot more closer and layered together. They're pretty much on top of each other. You can do sustained notes when you get really good at that, and then you're just using your mouth pressure to do the snare. So it's pretty handy for stuff like that. Cora said, I'm seeing progression right now. At first it just sounded like air. Now I'm hearing a bit of crackling. So that's good. Once you start hearing the crackling, that means you're zeroing in on how tight your lips need to be in order to really get the sound to come out. So I found, because there's a couple different ways people do it, and one way people do it is they kind of puff out their lower lip, and they force all the air pressure, kind of like a bubble, and then they push it forward. I think because I have a history playing wind instruments, I didn't learn it that way. So my lips are completely tight, and I just force the sound essentially from the middle of my lips. So when you start hearing the crackling, start working on focusing that burst. Try the center of your lips for positioning. Don't let it kind of flap or let the sound go dispersed from your lips. Try and focus it towards the middle and keep that tightness and that little gap in the middle. So instead of going kind of like, focus it towards the middle and you'll get more of a shot type sound, and that's the. Cora says, when I do that, it sounds more high pitched, almost like an elephant. So if you're getting kind of more of a, let me think here. If you're getting more of a kind of almost like a buzzing type sound, then you might not be tightening up enough. So try and play. It's a little bit difficult to describe because everybody's lip anatomy is different, but you don't want the pitch to sort of go up. You want it to actually maintain as little pitch as possible, and focus on getting it short and sharp. And again, day 1, hour 1, it's going to be difficult, but the more you practice it, then the more kind of refined it'll get, and you'll probably see it evolve over time. But focusing on where the air is coming out from is pretty important. I should have mentioned that early on. I think you could technically do the BGM snare like on the side of your mouth. I don't know how. I don't know anybody who does it that way. But just focusing the sound coming out of one spot and then controlling that tightness. And you'd be surprised. You can make your lips almost completely airtight, and then you're forcing the air through to just part them a little bit, and then you clamp down again. And I think the key to the sharpness of a BGM snare is clamping down, right? You're forcing the air out, clamp down, so that's how you're getting the. And it's also warm up. Again, when I first try and do that sound cold, I can get it to come out, but it doesn't sound sharp. It sounds a little bit more muffled. But after doing things that get the blood flowing, just practice warm drills like we talked about, it becomes sharp. And then once you figure out how to do the sound and you're practicing on getting it good, then you start working through ways to do rapid snares, which is really fun. And it's something to work towards, especially if you're interested in kind of developing techniques for beatboxing. Of course, says, I'm having a lot of fun with that. Hey, that bit about the center was really helpful. Oh, good. A lot of it's trial and error. It depends on, again, anatomy, but I want to try and break the concept down as easily as possible so people can learn. And of course, says, I'm glad I have the benefit of your experience. I'm just trying to relay how I learned. So hopefully it helps. Hey, Edward's here. What's up, Edward? Welcome to the jam stream. So real quick before I forget and lose my train of thought on the idea of building on the spit snare technique. So rapid snares, real interesting way that I've seen people do like a double snare. There's a couple different ways, and I'll show both. So you have the single, like a quarter note. You can mix it up in a faster beat and, kind of get them closer together. But let's say you want to do like a double snare. So one way I've seen people do that is you do essentially a triplet pattern where you do the spit snare, put a little bit of air out through your lips, and then do it another one after that. So 1, 1, 2, 1 essentially. And that sounds like. You could even do a B sound, like BTBs, the triplet kicks, bass drum kicks, the BTB. You do that with the spit snare essentially. So you're doing. And I think, what is it? What do they use for BGM snare? I forget the notation now because I haven't wrote it in forever. But you're essentially doing snare, kick, snare. So if you do that quickly, it sounds like. And you're getting snares close together, which is pretty handy. I do that sometimes for beats. It's It's a little bit more noticeable because you can hear there's a sound in between. So my preferred technique to do rapid snares is just to do one prolonged burst of air, but instead of doing the cutoff and clamping, which is my lips, I'm essentially doing the sound sustained, which is not how you learn it. And I'm using my tongue to interrupt the air, and it's cutting the air off that way. So let me see if I can demonstrate this in a way that's clear. So the regular spit snare is just 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you want to do another one, it's literally a new burst of air. Well, if you do a slightly more prolonged burst of air, but you use your tongue to interrupt the airflow, like staccato tonguing in wind instruments, the cutoff sounds a little bit different, but you get more, quote unquote, more snares out of one burst of air. So instead of separate breaths, you're getting, that's one burst using my tongue to do 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's probably not too distinguishable when you hear it. You might hear a bit more of a burst each time for the singles. But if you get really fast at doing that staccato tonguing to interrupt the airflow, instead of just going, you can get like that. And you get like that kind of machine gun rapid fire. And I've seen people do it. It's not like a technique I made up, but it's not one I see commonly used for that type of snare. And so let's say you wanted to do a real quick rapid double snare in a beat, and you didn't want to mix it up with a triplet type pattern. You could do that double tonguing to essentially cut the single snare in half to make it faster, using your tongue to interrupt the airflow. So if we demonstrate it two different ways. Let's say our beat is and we wanted to change it to 2 snares. Let's see, maybe every other is a second snare is probably the easier way to do it. So and that first version is 2 bursts back to back. It doesn't sound clean. In fact, they kind of muddy together if you're not doing it really forcefully. If you switch the technique and use your tongue to interrupt the airflow instead, it would sound like. And so that's using the tongue, and I think it's easier to do the rapid ones compared to just either resetting or do the triplet with like the beat in between. It just depends on the sound, the desired sound and effect that you want. But once you figure out how to do the regular spit snare, I say just experiment around with it, because being able to do that rapid one allows you to do like a run of 16th notes, I guess it would be, all in a row, which if you're slotting that into a beat can be kind of fun to do. So instead of just like a 1, 2 or 1, 2, 3, you might get something like. And if you play around with the tightness of your lips, you can get the pitch to shift a little bit too. You can make it go from like high to low subtly, and it might sound like. Very hard to hear the pitch shift, but you can make that snare essentially change in pitch, which is not something that people commonly do. It's definitely not how that snare is used. But talking about technique, and once you figure out how to do it, just making subtle tweaks and variations to how it comes out completely changes the sound and gives you a whole new one to work with, which, like we've talked about in the sound theory discussion before, it's one of the fun things about beatboxing. It's very open-ended. You can do a lot with the tools they give you if you're creative and just experiment around. So hopefully that discussion was helpful. Again, thanks to Cora for asking the questions about the technique and breakdown for the BGM snare. It's one of my favorites. That's why I like talking about it. Let me change my caption. We'll go into practicing and the grind, as it were. Oh. No, come on, YouTube Studio. Practice drills. metaphor says it's a good thing human and alien musculature is similar, huh? Well, I do have to inhabit a human body in order to stay on this planet. So, I'm pretty much operating the same tool set as the rest of you. But that's a good point. All right, let me see if I can figure out how to put this back up. There we go. Let's go for a new personal best on the freestyle. And this one should do it. Nope, not that one. This one. There we go. Oh no, that changes the display. That's not what I want. One sec here. My mouse that I use for streaming and everything else, the left button is not working. So sometimes it doesn't actually register when I click on stuff, which is a bit annoying because I can't tell if I'm clicking on the right thing or if it's just my mouse is not working. All right, let me see if I can get this one to work here. I want to stop. That is not stop. Oh, I think I found it. Got it. I was clicking on the wrong one. Okay. I got the timer here. And so what we're going to do for this next part, this will be sort of like our main bulk of the practice and drills, combined with attempting to break the freestyle record. Personal best, 16:28. So rules for those who might not have seen me do this before. I have to start as soon as the timer starts in freestyling beats nonstop. I can't physically stop to drink water, take a break or anything. I can stop to breathe so I don't pass out on my feet, but I can't physically stop what I'm doing until the timer is over. So if I stop, then that ends the challenge. And usually it's when I run out of ideas or I just get exhausted. So this is an endurance challenge. So for the next stretch of time while I'm doing this, I won't be able to respond to chat because I can't stop. So feel free to drop things in chat, and then once I finish, I'll circle back and make sure I didn't miss anything from you folks. But if people jump on and say hi, that's usually why I preface this in the beginning. Once the timer starts running, I'll be off and making funny mouth sounds. So that's why if people wonder why I'm not talking to them in chat. So again, it's been a couple weeks since I've done this, so hopefully I'll be able to break the record. 16:38. All right, I'm gonna get my water ready here. I can't stop and drink. All right, let's do it. Switch. You've activated my trap card. Hey. Switch it up. Whew. Oh man. I really needed some water. I was really hoping to get to 20 minutes, but my mouth is so dry by the end of that. I was dying. All right, let me write that down. 1737. Not the best improvement. Next time we got to go for 20 minutes. Put that right here. You can go away. Of course, says spit that fire. Do my best. between my voice getting kind of strained and running out of just moisture. That was not easy, but it was a good challenge. So that said, let's move on to the BGM portion of today's stream. And again, this is what I want to devote most of my time to today, since I think we have a lot of interesting tools. So let me change the caption real quick. Edward says, at a certain point I was like, what song does that remind me of? Then I remembered it was one of your beats. I try not to do that as a crutch when I'm doing these freestyle challenges. So you guys might hear slightly remixed versions of my BGM beats in there every once in a while. But I don't want to get into the rut of saying, I can't think of anything. I'm just going to go pull one of the BGM beats out of the vault. But sometimes I'll use little bits and pieces as kind of like transitions, or maybe remix them a little. But I want you guys to call me on that. If I go and do like 5 minutes of just regurgitated beats, then I want you guys to let me know and call me out and say, hey, that might be cheating. All right, let's put this here. Okay. So, since we're working with Synthesizer-kun today, I can't sit down because I can't actually hit my keyboard, my synthesizer, if I'm sitting down. But that's okay. I've been practicing and working with this a lot, so I'm kind of used to standing for a while. But like we kind of demoed last time, I don't think I did this too effectively, so I apologize if it was a little bit clunky when I was doing this before. But hooked up to my loop station is... Let me get the timer off the screen here. Personal best. Hooked up to my loop station is this gigantic Yamaha synthesizer that I have. And if you saw my post on Twitter, getting this thing hooked up to my streaming setup is not quite very feng shui, but that's all right. But we now have access to the instrument set of the synthesizer hooked up directly to the loop. So if I do something like... everything that comes out of the synthesizer is captured on the loop station. And that's really annoying, sorry. So what you're going to find on the Halloween BGM pack, which is going to come out probably... I'm going to start uploading and getting everything submitted to the music streaming sites at the beginning of October. Like, I'm going to have everything organized hopefully by the beginning of the month, and then get it submitted so that by the time it gets approved and goes live, hopefully before the middle of the month, then it'll be there in time for Halloween. Because if I wait till the middle or end, I don't think it'll show up on time. It takes a bit to process for Spotify and Tidal. So what you'll find on the Halloween BGM pack is there's going to be a mix of beatboxing type sound tracks with a hybrid of my beats and noises and stuff, and then things from the synthesizer as supplementary instruments, and it's going to be kind of a mix. It's been a real fun experiment pairing quote-unquote real instruments with the beat ideas and doing this kind of hybrid sound. And so it's going to be a bit of a mix. The next concept project I'm working on, I don't think it's going to be the next release after the Halloween BGM pack. What I'm planning on doing, hopefully in November, maybe end of November, is releasing the second stream BGM pack that we've created collaboratively here on stream. And that goes back, I think, at least a year's worth of streams. So there's a lot of older stuff on there, but that's going to be a whole handful of tracks that were created with the help of Stream Chat and named with the help of Stream Chat. And that will be the next release after Halloween. I actually have that collection done now. It's recorded, it just hasn't been tagged. But Halloween came up first, so that's going to come out in October. And so I'm shooting for end of November for the BGM pack, or before the end of the calendar year at the very latest. The next theme concept pack is going to be sometime in early 23, maybe January. I haven't decided yet because I'm still working on it. But it's going to be in a different type of theme pack in the vein of the Halloween type ones, but it's going to be fantasy themed. And so I've been working on a bunch of tracks. In fact, I've recorded quite a few. I need to pare down which ones I want to put into the actual release. But unlike the kind of spooky, atmospheric, experimental, weird stuff of Halloween and the kind of more collaborative stuff of the BGM packs or stream sounds, this next one is going to be more fantasy oriented. I wanted to kind of go for like an old school RPG OST type of vibe. And so a lot of the synthesizer sounds and instruments are going to feature really heavily on that collection. It's still mixed with beatboxing sounds and using the loop station to augment the sounds and instruments from the synthesizer. But it's going to have a different sort of feel to it. And so for today, since, again, Halloween pack is done, it just hasn't been tagged and uploaded, I'll be continuing to drip feed the track list between now and October, mid-October. Let's see. Edward says there's a bit of fuzz when you talk. Let me check my EQ and settings. My voice is a little bit raspy, but let me know if you're getting some really obvious feedback, because I can't hear it. Everything is coming through clean on my headphones, so let me know if it's still doing that. But if my voice sounds scratchy, it's because of doing all of the bass stuff we were doing before. But if there's actual feedback, let me know, and I can try and figure out why it's doing that. I might need to drop the settings on the mic source in OBS. But yeah, I tweaked the dynamics and EQ a little bit. So let me know if that fixed the problem, Edward. Okay, I'm gonna leave it there, and folks, let me know if I need to fix it. I'll also make sure none of my cables are feeding back into one another here. Core says I can hear the fuzzy too, but I think it just depends on the recording software. All right, let me do this. I'm gonna drop my sensitivity down on the mic source. Because we shouldn't be getting any sort of fuzz, especially not when there's no other sounds competing with me. Let me try one thing here. Okay. How about now? I dropped the level down a little bit in OBS. Let me know if I'm still getting distortion. That's a little concerning because I haven't had that problem on jam streams before. And I don't think it's the synthesizer because I don't have that one up too loud. Core says I could still hear, but it's not a problem for me. Alright, let me try something else. Normally, when I use my regular mic setup with my Scarlett, I have to boost the audio a little bit more. So let me try and drop it down a lot. That's one thing I have done differently since the last time we did one of these jam streams. Okay. How about now? I'm showing not really any noticeable feedback on my end, but if I just talk normally, are you guys still able to hear fuzz? Because there shouldn't be any. What I did is I dropped down the mic. I dropped down the mic sensitivity and dynamics, and the boost in OBS. Of course, as I could still hear it. Is it any different each time I've asked? Okay. Uh, Edward and Cora, let me know if you can hear a difference. If nothing I'm doing is affecting it, then I want to make sure I'm tweaking the right setting to make it sound better. Edward says, I think it got quieter. Cora says, like I said, I can hear you clearly enough, and that's not a problem. Yeah, I'm not worried about you guys being able to hear me, but I don't want the actual quality of the audio to be distracting. I could drop it down some more. I just need to remember to turn it back up later. Because I think the problem is I'm adjusting the boost in OBS, but I think it actually is better if I boost the sound from the loop. In fact, let me test something for you folks. This is a loop setting, not an OBS setting. Right now, with everything I've done when I'm talking at this moment, do you hear any sort of fuzz or feedback? It's going to be lower volume though, so I'm probably going to be quieter. But I might be able to balance that a little bit. If I do it like this, can you hear any feedback? Okay. Let's see. I think it might be connected to dynamics. Maybe not. Maybe it's my EQ settings. Okay. I'm sorry to sidetrack everyone like this, but I want to make sure that the audio issues are fixed. When I have it like this, does it sound like there's actual fuzz? Because I can hear it. Does it sound like there's static behind me? In fact, I hear a buzzing in addition to fuzz. It should be really noticeable right now. Can everyone hear the? Okay, I think it's EQ. I think it's EQ, not the OBS setting. So put it back. All right, we'll figure it out. I promise. Okay. How about now? Change the balance. Change the balance. Drop EQ down. I think the EQ might have been turned up a little bit high from my other mic. So let me know how it sounds now. I boosted the OBS setting back up near where it was, and dropped the EQ down. Kept my dynamics boost where it's at, and up my mic sensitivity a little bit. Yeah, now I can't hear the fuzz at all unless I turn my output way high, like super loud. Core says it's nearly gone. Whatever you did with EQ made it a lot quieter. I think that was doing it. Let me know right now if this sounds better. We'll leave it here. And I can save my settings here. Part of the problem was when I had my loop station and my synthesizer hooked up in another room, I was using a different mic, so I tweaked a bunch of my settings, and then I realized it's better if I just use the same mic since the quality is a little bit better on it. And so I have to basically revert my settings to what it usually is when I'm streaming. So with the EQ tweaks and everything else, let me know if you could still hear noticeable amounts of fuzz. But I think that was doing it. good. That's good for me to know. I think there's going to be maybe a little bit. Shouldn't be noticeable amounts of distortion. Yeah, we'll leave it here for now. Let me know as we proceed if I need to tweak anything else, and I'll do that. I definitely want the sound quality and the quality of the VOD to be decent. Hopefully it wasn't super noticeable with the feedback while I was doing the freestyle challenge. That would be disappointing. Anyway, while we work that issue along with everything else, so like I mentioned, the next themed project is going to be kind of more fantasy themed. And so I want to spend some time today experimenting around with ideas for fantasy type songs, a mix of higher energy, lower energy, heavier, lighter. And these ideas are probably going to flow into that next project. So to that end, and I got to be careful because I have to kind of turn around to hit my synthesizer here, so you might see my model wig out a little bit. But one thing I've been messing around with is using the synthesizer's drum kit to piece together the beat. And it's going to sound a little bit different, a little bit more clean, but also a little bit more mechanical compared to doing the Beatbox beats. But that's okay because the whole project's meant to be kind of a hybrid. It's not necessarily one or the other. So let me load up one of the synthesizer's percussion kits, and we'll come up with a rhythm and start constructing a potential theme around that rhythm. And I think I want to go a little bit slower for this one. So let's see here. Okay, this one should be Phil Collins. What's called Standard Kit 2 has a pretty common set of percussion-based instruments, all sorts of drums and drum-related type. I gotta be careful I'm not talking away from my mic. Drum-type sounds. So bells, different types of toms or heads. Some cymbals. I don't know what this sound is called. Every synthesizer sound set ever created has like 2 variations of this sound. And it's really funny, but I don't know what it's called. But we wanted to start with a kick. And that is coming through super loud. Let me drop that down a bit. Part of the challenge is all of these things, synthesizer and loop, are playing through a single input. So the synthesizer is essentially behaving like a mic in that all of the boosts that would normally be done to just my mic that I'm speaking into are also being applied to the synthesizer. So I just need to be careful I don't have the synthesizer sounds coming in too loud, because I can't have them boost the synthesizer and my mic separately. It's all kind of merged into one input with the way this is plugged in. But let's set a bass kick. Okay, I can drop the faders down too if the actual playback on the loop is too loud. And I can boost it up if it's too soft. So let me know if there's any issue hearing what I'm recording here. Okay, so we have a kick line, and it's pretty short. Nothing too complicated. But now I want to add a hat rhythm on top of that. So we're going to overdub on the track like we would normally do with the regular beatboxing stuff. And we're going to stitch together a rhythm for this. I'm thinking offbeat double hat hits. This is a pretty short, like 1 or 2 measure. I think it's a 2 measure rhythm. So let's do this. Now I gotta listen and make sure it's looping cleanly. I think it's off. I think that the tail of it is off by like a half or a quarter beat. Let me try that again. Make it simple. Let's do doubles. Okay, that's better. Now we need a snare. And so now here's where we can kind of experiment around a little bit with the tools that we've got. We've got the array of preset instruments and sounds that the synthesizer is capable of outputting. But we've also got all of the loop input settings and track level settings that can affect the way sounds come out. So we could take something like, where's a good snare, like a regular drum hit snare. Yeah, that's pretty standard. It's like an unmuffled snare drum hit. And we could go and throw something like a filter over it. And then by changing the level of intensity of the filter without tweaking any of the actual settings and parameters of the filter effect itself, we can change the way the synthesizer instrument comes out and make a completely different type of snare. So let's see, what would make sense to slot in here? That's definitely not going to work. That could That could be a possible way to do that. I need to be careful, make sure my filter's not obscuring my voice too. I think it's slightly off though. Let me try and line it up a little bit better, and then we'll listen to it and see how it sounds before we move on. Okay, that's kind of an unusual sounding snare. Almost, to me, sounds kind of like you're hitting... It kind of sounds like you're hitting a snare with water on it. A little bit of distortion. Edward says, I think the last hi-hat hit would sound better as a triple. So the very last set, instead of being a double, adding one more at the end before it loops. Is that what you're saying, Edward? I could try that. It's a simple overdub. Off by Let me try that again. That's a little bit hard to hear. I don't know if you can hear the difference. Edward says, I mean it being faster so it fits the same time as the doubles. Oh. So you're saying the last hits are a triplet to be in line with the double kicks. I can't go back and do that without re-recording the whole thing. I can add sounds in between, but right now the last ones are 1, 2. I can't go 1, 2, 3 because I can't go back and edit the previous layer. So the only thing I could do, instead of going 1, 2, 1, 2, I can go 1, 2, 3. I can't go 1, 2, 3 because I can only overdub. I can't undub and redo. So I could, let me try this rather than delete this and potentially lose this prototype here. I can actually recreate what you're talking about here, and we'll see what it sounds like. Let's see. That's actually kind of difficult for my brain to wrap around. Yeah, I think part of the problem is the hats are always offbeat from the kicks. Like this. I think I would have to move where they are so that they could be staggered with the double kick. That might be a little bit more complex than I'm able to do just I don't know, with rhythm basses. Because yeah, I can add a third one on the end, but that's not what you're talking about. I think I'm gonna leave it for now because trying to overdub that and let me listen to it here. Unless we added it on the front of the last two, so let me try and see if I can slot it in manually. I'm trying to put it in early so that it's 1, 2, 3 on the front end. That might be doable. Oh, missed that time. Fortunately, I can redo the last overdub. That's what I'm experimenting around with here. I think I got what you're talking about, Edward. I don't know if it's exactly on beat. But I think I can do it better. Really subtle. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's on the front end now. Let's leave it like that. I think I could still undo it if I try and undo redo later. Okay, let's save this. Do not want to lose my work. What I'm thinking for this one, based on this kind of plodding, slower tempo, we like a cave theme. So underground, exploring like a cave dungeon. So I think we want kind of more of a plodding, kind of moving type of feel. So let's look at what wind would be good. I've done a lot of strings and flutes in the different tracks I've recorded so far for this. Let's take a look at the string presets, because I kind of want to do like not like a waltz per se, because this is really similar. This is almost 2/3, but not quite. So let me load up. We'll start with strings. Maybe we can use one of the string instruments I haven't used yet. So this would be a good opportunity to demonstrate what the different preset sounds sound like, just without any sort of alteration from the loop. So this is default strings. That's what they call chamber strings. I was just noodling around, but I think I kind of like that style, like a 1-2 ascending 1-2-1-2. It's kind of like you got a party of people moving through like a cave. So I did that completely by accident as I was demoing these different sounds, but this is synth strings. Slow strings. This is similar type of well, it's kind of soft string type sound, but it's got like a delay and a build up. So you hit it and it starts slow and the volume goes up. So if you're doing kind of like a long drawn out type of melody, it would be useful for that. But we don't want that for this. Is it tremolo strings? That's not bad. We might be able to do like a bass line with this too. Okay, I'm gonna try and put down a bass line with this. I'm gonna do a lower chord, and I don't play the piano, so I apologize if what I'm doing is not proper technique. I'm just trying my best to do this by ear and come up with stuff that I think sounds decent. So I'm gonna basically do a 1-2-1-2 ascending melody with this lower chord, and then I think I'm gonna pair this with like a low bass in the same notes, but this is like low end string type sounds, and then we'll kind of balance that out and see what we come up with here. I think that's the rhythm I want. Let me try and get it a little bit more precise. I'll drop the rhythm down a little bit so it's not quite as loud. Alright. You can pull up one of the basses, and I basically want to match that same pitch progression, but I want to put like a lower forceful low end bass underneath it, so it sounds a bit more kind of forceful and full sounding. So if we load up the bass sounds here, there's a whole bunch. I think maybe pick? Nah, I need... electronic sounding. Could even do like there's some bass strings, like a cello type sound. Let me see if I can find one of these electric ones. I can also go into guitar to bass. Or I could do regular piano and put guitar to bass on it. That's another thing I haven't tried yet. If we do that, I'm not going to be able to talk, but I can see how it changes the sound. All right, that yields kind of an interesting combination of sounds on this bass line here. I wonder if I recorded the loop at the wrong portion. I think it's syncing up in the second half. We'll leave it for now. That's something I could fix easily later. All right. So now we need to come up with another combination of instruments, or like a melody line, to pair with what we have so far. So let's look at the wind instruments. I wonder if there's a bassoon on here. I mentioned before that I've kind of messed around with the flute presets on here, the flute type instruments. This is what they call sweet flute. Pretty kind of clear, clean sound. We got pan flute. That's a possibility. Kind of sounds like a whimsical type sound as you're walking through a cave. Oh, put a pin in that. Regular bass default flute. Doesn't have quite the metallic type sound as the sweet flute. Piccolo. Really high pitched, higher register flute type instrument. This is a different pan flute. More breathy. You get kind of a bit more of a resonant type sound. Sounds more
artificial though. Edward asked, does it have an ocarina? It absolutely does. In fact, that's a couple more. This is recorder. Sounds like a recorder, like a kind of like a digital artificial recorder. Here's ocarina. There, that's sort of Zelda. This one seems a little bit low volume. I can drop that or boost that up a little bit. Put that in there and get sued. Ocarina does sound cool. I kind of like the way that sounds. Maybe go for like a lower melody. We could have a several note melody that loops. So we could have it loop back to back. We could have it staggered. There's a lot we could do with a melody here. It's been kind of fun playing around with the different melody instruments and just seeing whether I want to have a constant loop or have it staggered, like in between measures. We have pretty much infinite options on how we want to do that. Something like that. We could slot that in and just see what it sounds like. Another thing we could do that I've done a little bit, I'm not super great at it because it usually takes me a few tries, but we could overdub a harmonizing layer on top of the melody as well. Like we could octave it. If we did the exact same melody but we drop it down one octave, we just overdub a lower octave. So it would be down here. I'm not too good at harmonizing. I'm still learning how to do that effectively without knowing music theory. You could even add like a just real simple two-step. Maybe not this instrument, maybe a different wind instrument. And basically play around with different combinations of things and see how they sound. You can even swap out that melody. I just did that to loop in and show how it would kind of integrate and sync up with the other thing. So let's see what other instruments we got. Square, we're in synth now, I think. Yeah, this is the synth preset. We're out of the flutes. Edward says, by the way, for the bass line, I think you could fill out the empty parts of it by playing the same notes on the kicks that play between it. So let's explore that. So are you talking about let me try and make sure I understand what you're saying. Same notes on the kicks that play in between it. Oh, so you're talking about putting additional bass notes for the kicks that are in between where the current bass notes are. So it's not empty. Let me see. This isn't a good instrument to test that. We'll go back to piano. I think I understand what you're saying. I'm just not quite sure how to put it into actual practice with an overdub. So it would be the same two-step but repeated. Is that what you're saying? Repeated after in the empty spots that have no bass right now. Like that. That was not a good example. Yeah, I know you mean with the same bass sound. I just switched to piano just so I could place the notes. So we did grand piano with guitar to bass. I remember my settings. Let me get my mic back on. I couldn't talk while I had guitar to bass on. You might have heard me grunting as I was trying to get that to record. So before I try and overdub something else on this, is this the type of updated bass line you're talking about, Edward? Because I could take what we've done and then I can overdub the string sound. It's a different instrument. Keep these other ones out while we figure that out. string instrument that I use for that? Tremolo strings, right? Yeah. Okay, so if I try and overdub this again, I'm not going to be able to undo what I just did with the bass line. So if in fact, now if I save, it's gonna undo it as well. Edward says that's exactly what I was saying. Okay, good. So what we'll do is we'll add in the strings and we'll save it. Okay, so what we've done is we've updated the bass line to include more notes in between, and now there's no dead spots in the bass line. I think it sounds good. I like it. It gives it a bit more of a kind of bouncy feel. So if we think about the construction of the track so far, I think the rhythm, bass line, and this slightly subtle progression on the winds is good. I don't know if I want to keep the ocarina part. I think if we added that in here, it would clash a bit. To me, reworking the ocarina melody a little bit would probably be a good idea. The way because we did these all separately, right? The way it's written now, I don't think fits with the kind of rhythm of the bass line and the wind part. So we could still do something with an ocarina melody, but I don't think the one that I recorded just as a sample would fit. I do like that progression of notes. It might be useful in something else, but I don't think it really fits with the construction so far. But we don't have to delete it off right now. I can record something else on another track, and then if we like it better, we can just clear off number 3, which has the ocarina melody on it. So let me pull up that instrument and let's noodle around with some more ideas for ocarina. I'm just messing around with some different combinations of notes for this. I don't think your ocarina is a quieter instrument. These other ones, I have to boost the synthesizer volume just so it comes through and it's audible. That might be a possibility. that type of rhythm would fit kind of bouncy nature of everything better than the one that we did before. So I'm gonna try and record that, and then we'll pair it up and see what it sounds like. I think that's functional. Again, this is meant to be like a cave theme. I think it's coming across a little more whimsical in tone. Edward says maybe a different wind sound would fit this beat better. It's possible. We can mess around with some other instruments and ideas. But one thing I kind of like about this new ocarina melody, I like this better than the other one. So if we compare, not only is the rhythm kind of off just because it was just a random combination to demonstrate the instrument, but it really clashes with the rhythm of the bass line and the supplemental melody. So I'm going to clear that one off. Let's save our progress so far. But one thing I think would be kind of cool if we were structuring the BGM track, like we have different sections and phases, right? That's kind of how I structure these no matter what style or what type of song I'm doing. We could isolate just the supplemental winds and that ocarina, and I think they would pair together on their own. So that would sound like... And we do something like bring the beat back and then bring beat and the bass line back or something like that. But we could take just the higher end instruments, and I think they would pair fine on their own. And it'd be kind of an interesting break in the song as it proceeds. Have just these two, and then it brings everything back in and puts it all back together. The original experimental ocarina rhythm we recorded would not have worked at all. It was just too different from everything else. So what we've done, we've got 4 tracks in play here, a quote-unquote complete song as we've put together so far. We have an empty track, so we can think of a 5th instrument or sound set to put together. Take a look. Edward had suggested maybe a different wind sound. What are you thinking, Edward? What type of instrument? We have brass, we've got woodwinds, we have kind of any of the major instruments you can think of, right? That would be in a symphony or a band. So what do you think would be an interesting one to experiment with? And I'll pull it up on the synth here. This was part of the flute one, but we have, like, I'll pull up trumpet, for example. This is what's called sweet trumpet. That's very loud, my apologies. The volume of the instrument also depends on how hard I hit the keys, too. If I just lightly tap it. Really hit it, higher volume, which is why when I'm recording these sections of the loop, I need to be careful that I'm hitting them at the same intensity, or it'll be like, and I don't want it to be different volumes unless that's part of the effect of the melody. trumpet, regular trumpet, a little bit less bright. It seems like the sweet instruments, quote-unquote sweet instrument presets, are a little bit more forcefully bright, almost more mechanical sounding. Edward says the music is pretty loud compared to your voice. Okay, I'm kind of turning away from the mic when I'm looking at the synth. My apologies. I'm trying not to do that because then it's gonna be hard to hear me. But I can also drop the faders down a little bit so it's not quite so loud. If I do this, how's the balance now? Are you able to hear me over the background music if I'm talking directly into my mic? I'll do my best to not look away when I'm actively speaking. It's hard because I have to look sideways at my synthesizer to see what I'm doing. So I'll try not to do that and talk at the same time. But this is regular trumpet. Like I said, less bright. Still sounds like a trumpet. It's more kind of metallic than mine, like my Beatbox trumpet. This is muted trumpet. If you put like a sound mute at the end, gives it that muffled sound. That's difficult to duplicate with a synthesizer. Trombone. Probably better to use for like a low-end type instrument. So that's trombone. This is a trombone section, so this is multiple. I think this is meant to be more than one trombone playing at the same time. So it's kind of just more of a full sound. It doesn't have, at least not that I can hear. Yeah, I guess it does sort of sound like it's simultaneous noises. They're playing the same note, so it just sounds like there's more of them. French horn. French horn is going to sound a bit more muted in sound, not quite as brassy and bright as like a trombone or a trumpet. Almost sounds like a flute, just the way the synthesizer creates it. Kind of a mix between like a regular flute and a brass instrument. That sound is primarily achieved due to the fact that to play a French horn, you have to shove your hand up it. Which is why you say you should never shake a French horn player's hand. Tuba. Pretty pronounced low-end type sound. It's true, Edward. Look up how a French horn's played. It's a kind of unusual technique, but it's a neat sounding instrument. I've never played it. Chances are if we were going to do a low-end bass line type sound, we would pair like a tuba trombone if we were going for brass. Because this is like 70-something key synthesizers, I believe. I'd have to count them up, but it has a probably lower register than a human player is actually capable of playing on a wind instrument. So if we drop down to like the lowest octave, you basically get the synthesizer equivalent of the brown note. Oh, I didn't realize that's so loud. My bad. It's a foghorn. Tugboat, maybe. Brass section. You ever wanted to do the Rocky theme? Or like the coronation theme from Star Wars? Basically, a whole bunch of horns playing at once, kind of like the trombone section. Kind of interesting effect. Big band brass. I haven't looked at a lot of these because I don't use a lot of brass in the songs I've made so far. Yeah, that's like a big band brass section. Slightly different type of sound than the previous section one, but similar idea. This is melody horns. This one doesn't sound too different from the flute type one we heard earlier, or the French horn. Yeah, a little bit more muted. So anyway, I don't want to spend time just going through every single instrument on this thing. But for wind instruments, we've got like the brassier sounding high and low end ones. This thing also does woodwinds. If you go to the saxophone one, I think all the woodwinds are located there. I think for like a fantasy themed BGM track, probably wouldn't be thematically appropriate to do like jazzy, sexy saxophone type riffs, but this thing does do sax. It's a sweet tenor. I do want to do kind of a more like ambient, chill, jazz type BGM pack in the future. That's another one that I have on the release roadmap to work on. So if I do that, you're gonna probably hear a lot of stuff like horns and saxophone, stuff like that. But for this, you can find like a clarinet or an oboe. Here's oboe. Oboe has a kind of tight, higher pitched reedy sound. It's a double reed instrument. They're pretty hard to play from what I know. I've never played a woodwind instrument, but knowing people who have, a really good friend of mine played bass, clarinet, and sax. And he said reed instruments are very different in technique from brass. Brass instruments, your lip muscles are used a little differently than in reeded woodwind instruments, but it's interesting. Edward said, I think one of those earlier horns sounded better for the beat. I forget which one it was. It would have been one of the trumpet sounds, probably. I'm demonstrating the woodwind stuff just to show. Here's clarinet. It's what Squidward plays in the SpongeBob's. Trumpet. Of these, I think I would go with the more. Sorry, I'm facing the wrong direction again. I would go for the probably middle type of tone, not the super brassy, sharp sounding horn, but not the really muffled, muted sound of like a French horn. French horn sounds too much like a flute. If I wanted a flute-ish type noise, I could just use a flute. This is brass section one. This is the one that has the multiple horns. Was the one you're thinking about, Edward, one of the ones that has like the multiple instruments playing at once? Because those are easy to find. They're just called sections. I think that still might be a little bit too forceful for a song like this. If we're gonna do a battle theme, which I want to tackle that next, I think a more muted type sound would be better. This is melody horns again. It's very similar to a flute, kind of like the French horn, just because of the kind of soft nature. Edward says, I think it was the trumpet. This is bass trumpet. No additional special things with it. That could be a pretty simple complement to the melody. It's almost the same notes in a different order, really. You try that. We'll try and slot that in. And another thing we can do, like we were looking at earlier with the bass line, we could take the effects and on the loop, and we can really screw with the sound that's coming out of the synthesizer by just adding simple filters and effects over it. For example, we add ring modulator. This is the one that creates like kind of like the weird alien voice, depending on how high you turn it up. If we combine this with the trumpet, I actually don't know what it sounds like. We'll find out. I don't think that'd be the desired effect for a track like this, but we have that level of kind of customizability when it comes to affecting what's going to go into the tracks. So it is kind of a neat thing to play around with, since it's a tool set you wouldn't normally have unless you were using an instrument like this. But let's try and do this really simple. Actually, let's try and drop it down. Edward says that was horrifying. Yep, it sounded pretty awful, but it is interesting to know what that sound effect does. So here, let me stop everything for a second, save. Here's what I kind of envision for this theme. I think the high-end ocarina melody should be trading spots with the trumpet melody. I think we can have different phases of the song where each are kicking in at different times. Maybe we have several bars with one, and then it cuts out, and then the other one pops in. But the whole time, the beat, bass line, and the accompanying winds stay. So the constants are these three tracks. And then what's switching up in different parts of the composition are these playing melodies that are going back and forth. Jesus, my phone's going off. Now, the way these are recorded, I have to be a little bit careful when I bring them in because they're longer than the bass rhythm, so they get staggered really easily. Edward says the ocarina could be for the intro before you enter the cave. Yeah, that's true. If we were to do, the only problem with that is for the same reason, because of the way it was stagger looped. I might have to re-record it, but I'll worry about that later. So if we were thinking about how it starts. Maybe we have the beat and or the bass at the same time come in. And then the accompanying winds part comes in and it sort of stays. And then we play around with the horn and play off of the ocarina and have them maybe swap places throughout the song. I think that'd be a pretty fun way to construct the overall cave theme. Edward says, is there an effect you could put that makes the horn sound like an 8-bit instrument? I have been trying to figure out an effect on the loop that does that. This particular synthesizer doesn't have an 8-bit instrument set that I've seen yet. I haven't seen everything this thing does. But if I can figure out how to do that, you can be sure we're going to be working it into songs, because I really want to do chiptune type stuff. And right now, it seems like the best way for me to do that is to learn Cubase, which I'd like to do if I have time someday. But I'm sure there's a way to do it, either with the loop settings and the input effects, or in conjunction with the stuff that's in the synthesizer itself. So I've been looking, to answer your question, Edward, I've been looking, but I haven't found it yet. That would be the end goal, because I would love to create some old school like 8-bit styles chiptune type stuff and pair that with real instruments. I think that'd be really fun. So if I can figure that out, you can be sure that we'd have a whole BGM release themed around that stuff specifically. But yeah, I think that's pretty good foundation for this cave theme. Just a heads up for the theme BGM stuff, I've got track names already. I'm not going to tell you what they are yet, but unlike the other ones where I asked for suggestions from the chat on what to name them, these ones are already preset because I kind of wrote out a track list. But you'll have to wait and see when we actually get further down the line. I'll probably do like a similar thing I'm doing with the Halloween pack and release the track list leading up to the actual drop, just so people can see. I don't know how many are going to be in this next one, but it's going to be a lot because I've already recorded quite a few, and I think maybe, if I feel really ambitious, maybe 20. Because the Halloween pack, which I haven't really talked a lot about the entirety, because I don't want to just give everything away. The Halloween pack is 16 songs. It's the biggest release I've done so far, but I came up with a lot of really fun ones that I put together, so it's 16 songs. So for this fantasy themed one, I'm kind of thinking 20, because from now until like next year, it gives me a lot of time to record a whole bunch and then whittle down the final total to however many I want. I am doing something a little bit unique with the Halloween one, and you guys will see when it actually releases. But I want to do the same thing with the fantasy one. That's going to give it a little more flavor. It has to do with the YouTube video that I'm doing for it. That showcases the songs, puts them all in one edited together video for people to preview. I'm doing something different for the Halloween pack, so you folks will see that next month. I think it'll be fun. But let's go ahead and move on to another track. I want to do one more in our time together here on the jam stream today, and I want to flip the tone a little bit. So let me create a new one here. And then maybe we can preview some stuff I've been working on. I can actually do it directly from my computer because I've recorded the Halloween stuff. We'll see. But let's clear this off, start a completely new loop. And we'll save everything and we'll start completely from scratch again. And this one, I want to do a battle theme. That last one was kind of a whimsical, exploring a cave dungeon type deal. Ended up being a bit more whimsical than I thought. I was expecting kind of a bit more of a moody, dark cave type theme. And instead, it's kind of more like a fairy cave or something, which there's nothing wrong with that. I do need a track like that in the lineup. But now I want to do something a bit more aggressive, like an actual battle. And right now, I think there might be 2 or 3 battle themes. I'd like to do maybe 4 or 5 in total, like a general battle theme, maybe a boss battle theme, maybe like a special type of encounter battle theme, and then a final boss theme. The final boss one I've already done. You folks aren't going to see that anytime soon. That one I actually really like. It's pretty fun. But for a more epic battle theme, higher tempo, I think we can put together a kind of driving rock-ish type beat, and that's usually where I start with these. And I think I'll actually pull the rock instrument kit for this. That's built into the percussion section here, and that'll give us some good instruments to use. This one's called Rock Kit, appropriately enough. So if we were to test out, okay, this is probably going to be a little loud. Yeah, I can't drop the volume down too much lower. I'll try. I just won't hit the keys quite as hard. Wish there was a metal kit on here. If there was like a heavy metal sound set, I absolutely would purpose that for something like this, but we'll stick with this for now. So we can start with kicks as usual. And I got to think about the other ones I've done so far. So one theme that I have finished, the driving rhythm on the bass kick, something like that's the rhythm. So I don't want to do that again. See, where's my snare? That might make it easier. Okay, we'll use that as sort of a bass line. We could do something like that. I think I have one similar in tempo to that too, but not identical. So we could sort of vary up the tempo and make it so it's not just 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 like that. And maybe have a fill. That I don't do in a lot of them, but I think it'd be kind of fun to build out the entire looping rhythm to include that at the end. Oh, we could try. It's not hard to do that. It's wrong amount of measures though. I think I like that better because I think that that kind of more triplet is similar to the other one that I did. Maybe do something like that. Actually, the fill is making it hard to loop. There's another way I can get around that, so I don't need to build the fill into the actual rhythm. In fact, that might just be making it harder on myself. Let's keep it simple. I'll kind of demonstrate what I'm talking about in a sec. Okay, I'm gonna shorten it to 1. Completely missed the first one. I wonder why. There it is. I don't know why I was missing that before. I'm using the wrong kick too. Yeah. Weird. If I'm a half second off hitting the loop and the first note at the same time, it's missing it. That's why there's a gap at the beginning of the loop. I wonder if there's input delay. That could be why. That's fine. We can work with that. Oh, put that on the wrong track anyway. Maybe that's why I was having trouble. All right, last time. All right, let's add a hat. Where are my hats? This is an open hat. I think that's too aggressive. I don't think like was this a ride? I don't really like the way that sounds paired with it. Try another kit too. We don't have to just use everything from the rock kit. This is more of a crash. This one has a little bit less of a ding type noise than the one on the other kit. That's not bad. I think I'm gonna save this this beat right now. I don't make it too messy and complicated. So real quickly, to demonstrate what I was talking about with fills, this should do it. Nope, not that one. One thing I found on one of the other tracks I've already done is you can use the beat scatter to basically mix up the rhythm, and when you turn it on, it functions like a fill. I just don't remember which pattern I used. Oh, okay, that kind of works. Pattern 2. So the way it would work if let me put this up a little bit so you can hear it. Kind of depends on when you throw it. I wonder if pattern 1 will work better. Yeah, it might be something to mess around with, but basically you can turn it on and off and it shuffles the beat around and makes it sound like a fill, which is kind of handy. Alright, let's move on. Bass line. I think we want kind of a more rapid driving bass line. Maybe not something that's like 16th notes rapid, but something that's going to kind of keep up with the tempo and kind of, drive towards like an aggressive type sound. Let's take a look at our bass instruments. That's a bit too synthy, I think. I would ask, how fast is 16th notes? Well, this is quarter notes. Is eighth notes? So 16 notes would be faster than that. I actually can't hit the keys that fast. Edward says eighth sounded good. Yeah, I think I like the feel of eighths too. But I gotta figure out where to put the bass line, like where we want to start it. C, really low C. That might work. Let's try that. My apologies. I keep boosting up the faders so that I can hear, but I should be messing with the output into my headphones because otherwise it's going to be too loud for you folks. I think the note, the spot where we have it playing is good. I don't know if I like the progression of the notes yet. Let's stop that one for a sec. I'm not going to delete it quite yet. Edward says, sounds a bit too fun for a battle theme. I was thinking the exact same thing. Like it sounds like a fun party rock song. That's not necessarily what we're going for here. I another instrument we can try. It is kind of an interesting sound, but really not battle theme ish. Let's pull up electric guitar. Could be the note we're starting on too. And also, the other battle theme I know I've done so far I can remember, it has an upwards ascending bass line. In fact, it's very simple. It just goes like 1, something like that. We could try descending and kind of put ourselves in a different section, different note progression. I think that's one step too far. Oh, maybe just make solid steps. Let me try that. We can go back and actually we want it to be a bass line, so we can actually add guitar to bass, which is going to boost the low end on top of that and make it sound more like a distorted bass instead of an electric guitar. So we can do that. Okay, that one records at a little bit lower volume, but it's also got a bunch of distortion from the bass. So let me know if you can hear it. I could tell it's much softer. I can actually boost the track level volume a little bit. That's a little bit better. We can layer. We can layer this. Still sounds relatively soft. If I boost it up, you're going to get a lot of feedback. I'm going to leave it there for now. I might have to mess around with that a little bit. I do like the descending progression. Now let's figure out what else we can pair. What else do we need for a battle theme? We need like an actual melody, right? Oh, I know why it was so soft. I had the synthesizer turned way down from the other instruments we were using. That's why. Yep, that's exactly why. Alright, that's easy enough to fix. I'm going to re-record that. It'll be a little bit louder and I don't have to mess with the volume quite as much. Okay, I think that works out a lot better. I need to be careful about that and make sure I have the right volume whenever I'm recording the different instruments. Some of them are a bit louder than others, and also I need to be careful how much I'm hitting the keys, how hard I'm hitting them. Alright, so we have kind of like a lower end bass line and kind of working with this descending melody, which I think sounds pretty good. It's very different from the other one that I've done. So now I need to think of another type of instrument to pair with this that's gonna make sense for a battle theme. So let's see, maybe strings? Pretty simple, two note string part on the high end. I think it fits pretty well actually. That's what it sounds like if you reverse it. It basically delays it. Maybe we drop the strings down a little bit in the mix so they're not quite overpowering everything with that really high end. Edward asked, what would the strings sound like with fast notes? Good question. So if we do the same notes, we can try different strings as well. There's ones that are a little bit less sustained, so they actually would be kind of like faster notes too. So we could switch string instruments if we need to. But when let's record it and see. Same melody, but different rhythm. It's not straight notes. I switched the rhythm up a little bit because I didn't want to just do 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. I gave it a little bit of a extended part and switched the rhythm up. That doesn't sound bad. Does it sync up with the original though? Yeah, we wouldn't have them playing at the same time. It's not bad. What do you think, Edward? If you had a choice, the second string rhythm definitely makes it sound like a faster song. It gives kind of a more driven feel to it versus the other one. It still sounds like a fast theme, but it gives it less of a hurry to me. Switch. I do like the notes, so I think whatever permutation of the string part we keep, it's going to be the same notes. But let me try another string instrument here to kind of demonstrate. This is chamber. This one kind of lends itself to faster notes because they're a bit less sustained, like I mentioned before. So I think if you were going to try and do a rapid rhythm, it makes sense to use something that's a little similar to this. This is synth strings. Sounds really similar to the first one. Slow strings wouldn't work. There's too much of a delay. Tremolo strings. I think it sounds a little bit too muffled to me. And pizzicato strings, too plucked. Oh, I know what I haven't shown off. I really don't want to put one of these in my BGM tracks. I think it's a little bit hacky, but it could be something we mess around with. This is like a funny joke version. This is violin, by the way. I don't know if I really like rapid with that. You could do it because it's a little bit more clean sounding. There's cello. It's not bad. It sounds less like a string though. Almost sounds like a wind instrument just because of the nature of how the synthesizer creates the sound. This is contrabass. A little bit too muffly. Almost sounds like a quack. Where is it? Okay, here's what I was talking about before. This thing does orchestral hits too. think orchestral hits are really funny from a meme perspective, but I don't want to put them in my songs. Edward says Vine boom moment. You ever watch the beats made by I think Distant Cry is the dude's name? They're in those like worst rap beats ever created compilations. The guy clearly does it for fun to troll people, but he loves the orchestral hits. The orchestral hits and that weird like mid 2000s R&B sound that goes. If you've never seen those, you should definitely check them out. They're hilarious. They're really funny. If I ever do a meme song collection, it would be something like that. Yeah, I think that's the sound I was talking about, Edward. Really funny stuff. It's from the Nelly song. Yeah. That sound effect has been used everywhere. It's really funny. All right, let's try and zero in on our strings here. I think the bass string instrument with the rapid sounds fine. Listening to some of the other options that are a bit more shorter in kind of sound and wavelength, I don't think it's going to change too much. I don't think there's too much of a benefit from using those other ones, as long as you just keep the rhythm consistent. I'm torn on which one I like better, though. I might have to think on this a little, because I like the sustained because it gives a good counter like rhythm to the bass line and the beat, the rhythm, because you have those moving. The rhythm, the percussion rather, is moving really fast. The bass line is moving less fast, but still not, sustained notes. And then you have the strings, which are the slowest, but it gives kind of a cool melody in the background. So I don't know. I'm going to keep both for now, and I'm going to have to think a little bit about which one I want to actually use. But before we finish, let me save this. Edward says, I think both could work. Yeah, I'm going to leave him on here and experiment around with the idea of switching back and forth. I think having both in the same song would be a little bit weird, but having two versions of the song might be a way to kind of experiment with that. I don't know, because I like them both for different reasons. I don't know. We'll see. We can also try it here on the stream, switching between the two versions. But for now, we'll keep them here. Let's see what we can do with the last track. We've got one empty loop track that we could potentially add. So one more instrument that we could pair with our battle theme. Let's see what we got. Could do like a choir sound. I haven't shown that off yet. The choir instrument presets here are decent. Like, they don't sound like actual real people singing, but it's really close emulation of that. We could have something like a mix of low and high voices sort of chanting. That might be interesting, because I don't think I've done that on the battle theme yet. Now that I'm thinking about it, we could do a choir voice for the sustained notes and then drop it down an octave so it's not the same notes as the rapid ones, and then put it all together, and then it kind of compromises between having the two styles, right? You would have sustained notes, and it's following the same progression, it's just an octave lower, and then it's not competing with the strings. You could even drop it down in the mix so it's a little bit lower. And what I think would be cool, we could harmonize the notes on this chorus part. So here's what I'm talking about. I think 3 voices might have been too much. I'm gonna add one more, but instead of making super low, which made it just sound like a bass line, I'm gonna add one more voice. It's 1 octave up, and it's 1 octave below the strings now. So now, that's actually kind of an interesting effect. I don't dislike that. Let's save that. So if you think about the components of the beat we've got so far, start with the rhythm. Add the bass line. Add the chorus. Add in the strings. Let's see if I can get the fill to work. That's close. I have to mess with that a little bit more. Edward says, "Ayo, some of those voices sounded pretty real." It does a good job. It doesn't sound like a human really, but it's close. You know, it sounds like a simulated human voice. The chorus effects here are pretty cool. There's a couple of them. Like real quick, this is the bass choir one. Vocal ensemble. Like it sounds more convincing than like an 8 or 16-bit sound chip thing. It sounds kind of like a robot. Vocal ensemble. This is called Vocal Humana. Doesn't sound like people. Air choir. pretty passable for like a sung type note. I'm gonna up my volume so you can hear it. That was it for choir. I think the bass one sounds the best for what we're doing here. So I think we have a pretty functional structure for a song. This one actually came together a lot easier than the cave one. I think battle themes for the most part, unless you get really kind of crazy and experimental with it, they're a bit more straightforward. You know, if you want like an aggressive rock type sound, you don't need to do a lot of really experimental stuff unless you want to. I just have an easier time doing battle themes. But again, we think about the composition and effects. Let's get the whole thing playing here. Is this filter? Oh, filter's going to be tricky because I only have it set to affect the rhythm, since that's what I'm using to create the fills with scatter. So I don't know. Like if we turn it on for all of them. This is, was it high or BPF? I don't know what kind of filter that is. But we can really cut it out if we wanted to. I don't know if that would really be fitting for like a battle theme. There's no reason why you'd want to just cut out and muffle all of a sudden. But you could. And if you really wanted to screw around with the sound, you could do like a vinyl flick on it. Problem is, vinyl flick doesn't really work like a record scratch like you would think. It pretty much just, it's a record stop. So like you're taking a spinning record and just slowly stopping it on a dime, and then you let it go. It's not like a scratch. Like if you play with the intensity, you can kind of duplicate that effect, but it's not really supposed to be like that. It's not used in that way, and there's not much you can customize with vinyl flick. It's just... yeah, it's kind of like a rewind fast forward type effect and not like a scratch, which is disappointing. I wish they had something like that on here. Oh, my bad. I didn't delete the regular sustained 2-note string part off. It was completely drowning out the rapid one because they're both playing at the same time. But it's still there, so with everything except that one playing, we would get... Right now, I'm thinking in the mix, the chorus voices, I want it to be more forefront than the strings. Because the strings are a little bit sharper and they hit harder at the ear, I think I want the high strings in the back a little bit more. Edward says, I don't think the sustain was playing the whole time. It was when I was messing around with the effects. Because if I turn it on, you lose the rapid. It drowns out. It's just... I think it's because the volume on track 4 with the sustained is higher anyway. You can't hear the rapid if this is playing. I'm going to delete this one because we don't need it. Okay, save our work. So I got to think a little bit about how I want to structure the actual performance of the theme. It's not going to be anything complicated. It'll probably be like beat start. I gotta think about the other ones so that I'm not having them structured the same way. We could even have the chorus start first. I'd be okay with that. Maybe not. It is interesting, but if the chorus starts by itself, you're gonna immediately think you're getting like a church cathedral type song because of like kind of like monks or people singing, like a church choir, and that's not the song. Like the song's a battle theme. I think starting with the beat first, at the very least, is probably the best way to go there. So it would be. Maybe have the bass come in first to really showcase what that sounds like with the descending notes. And have the chorus come in. Strings. Everett says there should probably be just a chorus part in the middle, though. Yeah, that was what I was thinking too, like kind of like a breakdown in the middle. I don't know if I want to drop out the bass line completely, but I think it'd be cool to take the strings back out and then just focus on maybe just the beat and the chorus, or the beat, the bass, and the chorus. Another thing we could potentially mess around with is reverse just delays it again. I'll have to play around with some different combinations and see what I like the best, but I think having a part that drops the strings out and focuses back on the choir and the bass line would be good. We could even take the rhythm out. This could be like a bridge section that has just the bass line and the choir, and then it comes back with everything. I like that better. In fact, I'll probably have to watch this stream later, remember the note that I made. But I kind of like the idea of dropping everything out except the bass line and the chorus for a couple bars, and then bring it all back. And if we're thinking how the song's going to outro, maybe we cut out the choir and the strings. And then we stop there. That could be an interesting way to address that and resolve it. Okay, I'm gonna save my settings one last time. Okay. Interesting. I kind of like the way that came together. I basically spitballed stuff. I'm not a composer. I'm not even a real musician, really. I don't have any schooling in music theory. So a lot of this stuff I just experiment around and see what sounds kind of good to my ear. But we created 2 new themes, which is kind of more than I expected to get through. Doing this live is much more difficult than just doing it in my home setup, where I can mess around with whatever. But it was pretty fun. This was a lot better than the last time I used the synthesizer. Now that I kind of understand how to manage 2 different instruments and also make sure I'm not ignoring chat. So that's good. I will put those 2 in the list for recording. I may do some minor edits on some of them if I want to clean some stuff up, but more or less what you've heard is going to be the final product in some form. So let's see. Before we wrap up, let me see if we can go raid. My feet are starting to get very sore because it's been 3 hours of me standing here at my keyboard, or my loop station, my keyboard. But it was productive. Hopefully this process is interesting to you folks. We'll definitely be doing more of this. So let me see who's on the list. Oh, Bloodbite is live. We could go raid Bloodbite. I don't know. Talk shows and podcasts. Maybe they're listening to a podcast? We can go find out. So let me go ahead and switch us to outro. I'm going to have to listen to the VOD after this and listen to the audio. Hopefully we solve the problem of the feedback. I don't want that to be an issue in the future streams, but I'm sure you folks will let me know if it sounds weird. But we'll go ahead and go outro. And we'll go ahead and raid Bloodbite. So thanks again for tuning in, folks. We'll be back tomorrow for a gaming stream I missed during the week. I still haven't figured out what I'm going to play yet. It'll be a surprise.